Bring it on in for maybe the most important, best episode of the season in college football, Joe. Week 5 college football preview here from Beef Up Front. Arguably the best slate of the entire season. I think when the schedule came out back in whenever, April, May, when these games started fully being released, this was the day, this was the weekend that people were circling. You got some great NFL matchups, the Ryder Cup for those people who like golf, and then Saturday from noon till you go to bed. You got great college football games all day, a ton of ranked matchups, and we even got a Friday night matchup to touch on too. So a lot of big-time college football, Joe. We're starting to finally get into that part of the season where you can start putting pieces together about these teams. Like, all right, we're going to talk about LSU. They're really struggling to run the football thus far. USC, their offense has looked awesome, and the defense has been improving. Indiana, 63-10 last week against Illinois. The young quarterbacks that we were hyping up, whether it was Arch, he's looked a little bit better, but DJ Lagway has really struggled. Drew Aller hasn't looked that great. Georgia's got the big home game against Alabama this week. So many storylines to break down, talk about. But, Joe, welcome back. Got your first high school football win last week, correct?
Yes, sir. 35-6 over the Watertown Warriors. Big win for the program.
All right, we have a full slate to break down, as we said, and we're going to start on Friday night. We got our top 5 games of the week, and then we got our G5 game of the week this week. Surprisingly, not featuring Tulane this week. We got 2 different squads in this one. Excited to break down, but Joe, I'm really looking forward to this one tomorrow night on Friday. Number 24 TCU at 3-0, traveling to Arizona State to play the 3-1 Sun Devils. 9:00 kick on Fox. Arizona State's a 2.5-point favorite here, over under 55.5. Arizona State's one loss is out of conference, so there is still a scenario where we could look up in a few months in December, and this is actually your Big 12 title game. I think these two teams have looked the best thus far. Right there with Texas Tech, I think you throw them in the mix too after their beatdown last week of Utah, but interested to hear, Joe. You like Arizona State to win this one at home?
Yeah, I do, Coyle, for that exact reason. They are at home. I was impressed with them last week going on the road to Baylor, coming out with a win there. I'm going with Arizona State 35-31. I do like this TCU squad. They're really fun. They're better than I thought they were going to be, at least through 3 games. I know North Carolina hasn't looked that good, but that was still a pretty impressive statement to go into that environment and just completely control that football game after that, opening drive from UNC. But that being said, I think Arizona State's going to win this game. I love Sam Leavitt. He's just a gamer. He might not be the best quarterback in the country, but he's definitely one of the most fun guys to watch. I think he's a great leader. I think he means so much to that Arizona State program. I think he's going to have a monster game. I think this is going to be a great Friday night game to really lead us into the weekend. And, another good, interesting Friday night game. We don't have it on the docket. I might touch on it a little bit later, but Florida State, Virginia. That's a really interesting game. Florida State going on the road, with the look ahead spot to Miami next week. This is Virginia's Super Bowl. So I think that'll be really interesting as well. 2 really compelling Friday night games to send us into this awesome weekend.
Yeah, this one I'm really looking forward to. I think it has potential to be some fireworks, a lot of points in this one. But I was talking to McClay about it earlier. Like, if you were a TCU fan, or like you think TCU is going to win this game, I would look to bet Josh Hoover potentially to win the Heisman. He's sitting there at 18-1 right now. That's a wide open award. It seemed like John Mateer was kind of the guy, but still, even before the injury that he suffered, you look at their schedule coming up. There's no guarantee that team wins 8 games. Like, they could certainly slip up, especially the back half of that schedule gets really, really tough. So this is a spot where Josh Hoover has the numbers. Already has 1,000 passing yards on the season, 11 touchdowns. Only 2 interceptions, and he's going to sling the rock. And look at their schedule coming up. They got Arizona State, obviously, this week, but then they got Colorado at Kansas State, who's been disappointing. They play Baylor. They go to West Virginia. They play Iowa State. They go to BYU. They go to Houston, to Cincinnati. That's a pretty tough Big 12 schedule there that if they find a way to go 11-1 or 10-2, his name's certainly going to be in the discussion with the numbers he puts up. So it's a little side kind of angle for this one. But with all that being said, I'm going to roll with Arizona State at home in this one. I'm going to go 31-28, so Arizona State minus 2.5, over under 55.5. You mentioned it, Joe, but going to Baylor last week and getting the outright win. That was very impressive. I like them in that spot. And I think that wake-up call against Mississippi State, who I think is actually better than we definitely gave them credit for, and they might surprise and go to like a bowl game this year. What was the wake-up call that Arizona State needed? Like coming off that high of the college football playoff last year, they might have needed a little slice of humble pie here at the beginning of the season. Now you're going to have a raucous Friday night atmosphere at Arizona State. One of the biggest kind of party schools in the country. I assume everyone's there at this one. It's a 7 o'clock kickoff there, school time, and probably getting out of class Friday. You're pre-gaming, you're tailgating, and that's going to be a fun one to kind of lead you into the weekend. So Arizona State, I'm going to take them to win that one at home, 31-28. So Arizona State minus 2.5, over under 55.5. All right, Saturday, we got another really compelling one here kicking off at noon on Fox, our big noon game of the week, number 21 USC at 4-0, coming off a win against Michigan State. Traveling to number 23, Illinois, who's 3-1. And Illinois, Joe, if you have any sense of pride after losing 63-10 last week, you show up this way and you show up in a big way. USC's a 7.5-point favorite here, though, on the road, going to Illinois, over under 59.5. Any chance Illinois bounces back this week?
Yeah, I'm actually taking Illinois outright here, 28-24. I'm going to take the Illini plus the 7.5. I'm going to go under 59.5. I mean, you already saw Lincoln Riley, kind of bitching and moaning about how they have to go on the road and it's, an early game, noon kickoff, which is, for them, I think, yeah, it's a 9 a.m. kick for them body clockwise. They're all pissed off. The USC decided to destroy the Big 12 or the Pac-12. It is now, you reap what you sow. They're not happy with this. But I also think for Illinois, they just got totally embarrassed on primetime national game. Everyone, picking them to either win or at the very least keep it close. To get blown out like that against Indiana, especially too, even though Indiana went to the playoff last year, it's Indiana smoked you on national TV. That's never a spot you want to be in, even though Indiana is on the rise. I think they're definitely going to be playing for pride. And I think they're going to bounce back at home. I think the Illinois fans are going to be, locked in. The fact that I think it's the first time ever big noon kickoff is in Champaign. You're going to have, this is the game kicking off the day, and big noon kickoff. This is all eyes are going to be on this to lead us into a great night slate. Luke Altmaier, I think, is going to have a good game bouncing back. He is completing 70% of his passes this year. I know, he played the Sisters of the Poor the first 3 games of the season, but I do like Illinois to bounce back here. I think they're going to win it low scoring, close, kind of how Illinois likes to play, 28-24.
Yeah, it's a spot where I said at the beginning, if you're Illinois and you have any sense of pride in this game, you show up in a big way. If they come out in this one and they're flat, that's a season derailing type of loss. Like obviously last week was a huge blowout, but how you respond, how you bounce back from that will tell me a lot about this Illinois team going forward. And going into last week, USC was still a 1.5-point favorite for the look ahead line in this game. That number jumps all the way up to 7.5, 6.5. It's been kind of floating between that all week. It's a very disrespectful line here to Illinois. So I was all over Indiana last week. I love them. I thought Vegas doesn't really respect this Illinois team. This one's just a pride game for me, man. Like, I think Illinois shows up. I think they show up in a big way. But with that being said, I'm still very high on this USC team, and I'm not going to be surprised if we look up at the end of the year and they're actually in the Big Ten title game. So I think if you're a Big Ten title contender, you find a way to go on the road and win this game. But I do like Illinois to keep it within the number. Give me USC 27-24, Illinois plus 7.5. Under 59.5. One of my stats on Twitter earlier, the under in games that Brett Bielema is a home underdog in at Illinois, the under is 7-2-1 to that one. And I know Lincoln Riley and USC love to put up points, love hitting the over, but that's a pretty eye-popping stat there. I think Illinois really tries to corral things on defense this weekend and maybe slow this game down on offense after giving up 63 last week. All right, this one's going to be a little juicy as well. Some fireworks. Number 4, LSU at 4-0, traveling to number 13, Ole Miss 4-0. 3:30 kick on ABC. Ole Miss minus 1.5. Over under 55.5. LSU star linebacker Whit Weeks has found a liking to Landry Kiffin, Lane Kiffin's daughter. Lane Kiffin says take the over this week. We're going to put up some points on that dude's ass. Thoughts on this matchup, Joe? And can Ole Miss pull off the win here at home? Favorites, but according to the rankings, this would be an upset.
Yeah, and even I know point spread wise, they're favored. This to me would still be an upset. LSU is number 4 in the country. I'm going with Ole Miss here, 38-35. I thought it was going to be a high scoring game before I saw Lane Kiffin talking about taking the over. This would be very funny if it backfired and it was like 17-14. But I think Ole Miss is going to win this game close. We know, Lane Kiffin loves to put up points. This going on the road, the one thing that scares me with LSU is that even in the kind of gimme games that they've played, their offense hasn't looked great yet. I know they won 56-10 against Southeast Louisiana. Coyle, I'm pretty sure, you and I could figure out Southeast Louisiana if you gave us a week to prepare. But I guess this LSU offense is concerning to me. I think you're going to put up points on Ole Miss, but I just don't know if they have the horses to keep up in a shootout, especially in, we've already kind of been alluding to it earlier. This is going to be a massive crowd. We were talking about Illinois. You have a top 25 versus top 25 game at your place as a college student, going to these big schools. You only get so many games like this. You only get so many nationally televised, high profile games on your schedule because pretty soon, if you don't, if you take it for granted and don't realize it, Ole Miss could get off to a rough start and you're playing, you're the laughing stock of the league pretty soon. Obviously, they've been pretty good. I'm going to go with Ole Miss at home. I believe Trinidad Chambliss, right? I'm not losing my mind. Yeah, Trinidad Chambliss is starting again. I really like him. I think he's, really kind of taken that job. He's been really impressive so far. So I am going with the Ole Miss Rebels, big one at home, leading us into what will be on ABC, the Bama Georgia game, which is going to be awesome.
I'm going to go with LSU, Joe, going on the road here to get this one done. I think this is a spot where it's Ole Miss not being able to get into that kind of elite category in the SEC. I think that's the big thing where Lane Kiffin's name gets brought up for, whether it's the Florida job or it's been brought up for the Auburn job in the past. Getting into that elite SEC tier with the LSUs, with the Georgia, with the Alabama, now with the Texas. I think Ole Miss is kind of stuck in that middle gap, and this is just one of those games that kind of proves that further because everyone would say Auburn's a better job, Florida's a better job. When those teams are rolling, that's an elite job. Ole Miss, I think, is still kind of little brother here in this spot, and you can kind of point to matchups like this. LSU brought in the number 1 transfer class in the country. They've been balling out so far, and the offense really hasn't even gotten going yet. If the offense can get moving and the defense has been figured out now after a couple down years under Brian Kelly, this is a dangerous national title worthy contending team. They need to run the football better. That's where they've been struggling. But I do think that Garrett Nussmeier, all his experience, they have the pieces to go to Ole Miss and get this one done. And Trinidad Chambliss has been playing awesome, but this is a little bit of a different matchup than Tulane this week. This is this new and improved LSU Tigers defense. I think they're able to come in this week, kind of take this game by storm and an exciting one. But I am going to listen to Lane Kiffin and take the over 55.5. But I'm going to go LSU 35-31. So LSU plus 1.5 over 55.5. All right, let's go to our G5 game of the week. We talked about at the beginning. Tulane's been on this one a lot. Staying in the American, though, you got Rice at 3-1. This isn't the team really we wanted to talk about in this matchup, at least. I kind of want to do like one team every once in a while that we think can make the playoff. Their opponent, I think, has a decent chance if they run the table. At Navy, who's 3-0. This is a 3:30 kickoff on CBS Sports Network. Navy, 14.5-point favorite here, over under 45.5, Joe. Thoughts on this matchup and looking at Navy's schedule? Do you think that there is a legit shot that they make the playoff?
Yeah, there's definitely a path for Navy to go in there and make the playoff. I mean, they've already played 2 games in conference. They're 2-0 in conference, 3-0 overall. If they win this game against Rice, you're sitting there 4 games into your season with 3 conference wins under your belt. That gives you a pretty good cushion for the rest of the year. They still have Notre Dame late in the year at Notre Dame. They obviously have the Army Navy game. They have a tough schedule as far as G5 teams go. They don't play US, or they host USF. They don't play Tulane, excuse me. They host USF, but then they still have to go to Memphis, North Texas, who's also a team right there, in the top of the American Athletic. So they definitely have a tough schedule, but it's definitely possible. Blake Horvath being back for another year is huge. This was a Navy team last year that finished in the top 25. They beat Army in the Army Navy game last year. I really like Navy. I would not be shocked if they go into that Notre Dame game with either one loss or undefeated, especially if they win this game. Because, like I said, after this, you have Air Force at Temple, home against FAU. Then that game at North Texas is going to be interesting. That might be a game we're talking about again when the time comes on this show. But going into Notre Dame, that could be a really big game. Even if they were to lose to Notre Dame and then still win the rest of their games, 12-1 and Coyle. We talk about name brand stuff a lot with usually the bigger teams that are on the bubble. But if you have like an opportunity to put in Navy or say like a 2-loss Old Dominion, I feel like the committee would love to put in like Navy, and then you have everyone root for the troops. I think that'd be an awesome storyline. I definitely think Navy can make a run at this thing. But in terms of back to the game, I haven't watched a lick of Rice football this year. I know I'm supposed to know ball. I have not watched any Rice games. I'm going Navy here, 24-10. Think it's going to be low scoring. I'll take Rice to cover 14.5. Even though Navy's been covering this number against their last three opponents, the triple option is still one of those offenses that they're trying to grind the clock down. They're not trying to score punches and bunches. Um, so I'm going to go with Navy here to win a slow, methodical game. And 24-10, they'll cover that or Rice will cover that 14.5.
You didn't watch the game last week against Charlotte? I thought you had Rice.
I had Rice money line, but I did not have it on. I had the Thursday night game on instead.
Well, shout out to our friend Sean Bernard. He actually brought this to my attention last week. Was reading his article over at DraftKings. Rice runs the ball basically like a triple option team. You look at their rushing stats, just even like their rushing numbers. So I really like the under in this game of 45.5. I'm going to take Navy to win and to cover. But you touched on a lot of the stuff, kind of big picture. I won't beat the drum dead, but Navy, the schedule lines up for them to make a run at this thing. So especially with Tulane getting blown out last week by Ole Miss, their resume looks a little worse. So if Navy is able to take care of their business, they're going to be certainly in that conversation at the end of the year. I'll go Navy 28-13. So Navy minus 14.5, under 45.5. This game's going to be run, and run some more. I feel like an old 60-year-old white dude would probably enjoy this game. Some good old hard-nosed football out there or something. But yeah, give me Navy to win. Down to the big boys on Saturday night. Again, 4-0 at number 3 Penn State, 3-0. 7:30 kick on NBC. Penn State's in a 3.5-point favorite, over under 52.5. I'm scrolling Twitter, Joe, and we know James Franklin, Penn State haven't had much success against these top teams. I was surprised to see the last time that they beat a top 10 regular season team in the or top 10 team in the regular season was when they blocked the kick against Ohio State. And I believe that was in 2016. So pretty long time ago. Is he able to change the narrative this week?
Yeah, I'm going with Penn State here at home. The whiteout is always a plug and play for me. I said it last year. I've said it every other year. It doesn't matter who Penn State has lining up across from them. I'm taking them in the whiteout, even if I'm wrong. Like I think it was our sophomore year, Coyle, maybe our freshman year. Penn State hosted Ohio State, not the blocked kick year, but the couple years later. But and Ohio State ended up winning that game, but I still thought Penn State was going to win. That atmosphere is just insane. I mean, the viral clip every year of Shea Patterson at Michigan, Mo Bamba's playing in the background. They have to call a timeout first play of the game. You can't even hear the whistle from the TV camera. It's just insane. And while people are making a big deal about Penn State not having played anybody, and Penn State, they played all these like high school teams. Then they had a bye going into this game. Oregon had Montana State FCS program, Oklahoma State, which as we've seen is a complete disaster. Northwestern, who is Northwestern, even on the road, like that's not impressive to me. And then it's sad to say that the Civil War has turned into such a joke, but Oregon State is not what they used to be either. So this is going to be a really interesting game going into an environment like this. I really have liked what Dante Moore's done so far, but Penn State is a different animal. I think Penn State gets this win here. I have the final score 34-28. I'm going to go with the over, and I'm going to take Penn State minus the 3.5. I think it's going to be close, but I think Penn State gets it done. And you're going to see the Nittany Lions use this game to springboard them into an undefeated record going into Columbus.
If you could go to one college football game in the country? Given like any year, doesn't matter. Like doesn't have to be this season. Would it be the whiteout? You think?
Yeah, I mean, gun to my head, if obviously I can't pick Notre Dame. I'm a Notre Dame fan. Yeah, I would say the whiteout against a big opponent. Like a couple years ago, I remember because when Big Noon Kickoff first started, like they hosted Minnesota one year when Minnesota was like 4-2, and it
Yeah.
was Minnesota's biggest win was like they beat Miami of Ohio. Love the Red Hawks, but it was like, what are we doing here? But like a game like this, or like when they hosted Auburn, or like Ohio State a couple years ago, or that Michigan game, against a big team. And this is something, Cole, we talked about it. I know now all the networks like draft which game they want. And that's why Ohio State Penn State so many years was the noon game and it wasn't the whiteout. This is awesome for the sport of college football. When
Mhm.
Penn State gets a whiteout against a good top tier opponent, it's fantastic. Like I saw, like I was watching a podcast and they were talking about like the last five whiteout results, but it was including the playoff game against SMU. And like I know the playoff, yeah, they did all wear white, but that was different, playoff atmosphere. But then like last year, I think it was like they used it against Iowa because that was their biggest home game outside of Ohio State. It's awesome when you get a game like this when the whole country is going to be tuned in. And yes, you have Bama, Georgia, which we're going to get to in a little bit as well. But this is awesome for the sport of college football, awesome for the Big Ten in general. And I'm really excited for this game. I think it's going to be right down the wire. Knock on wood, Coyle, you and I have also talked about this. When it comes to primetime games, college football almost always delivers, or at the very least, compared to the NFL, delivers much, much more than the NFL primetime games. So I think this is going to be an absolute barn burner. I think this is going to be a game going into the fourth quarter. I think we're going to see a late drive from Penn State to ice the game, whether it be a touchdown or a late field goal. I'm going with Penn State to cover. I'm taking the over.
Yeah, I'm gonna roll with Penn State to win this one at home. You touched on it where people are saying that they haven't looked good at all, and they have played. Penn State has played Villanova, FIU, and Nevada. I basically said at the beginning of the season, that's your preseason. That's where you go. You work on some things. The passing game hasn't looked great, but I really don't think that they've shown anything. And sure, that could be proven wrong on Saturday night if Drew Aller and the passing game goes out there and struggles. But why put anything on film? This is the game you were building up to, leading up to these three kind of preseason games against those inferior opponents. Then you get your bye, and then your big kind of Super Bowl here against Oregon. And you got to win this game if you're Penn State because you can't be having to go to Columbus and needing to win that game. Because if you go 10-2 and you lose this one, you lose Ohio State. Really, where there are any quality wins on that schedule, there could be a scenario where Penn State's on the outside looking in the playoff if they lose this game. If they win this game, they'll definitely take care of business in the rest of them, and then just have to look competitive in that Ohio State game, and they should be in. But 11-1, they'll certainly be in. But it's a scenario we talked about it last year with Penn State when Ohio State came there. But I think you got the advantage here now when it's at night. But if not now, then when for Penn State? All these coaches, they all had to kind of go through their lumps, go through their bumps and bruises. Kirby Smart, how many times fell short to Nick Saban and then finally broke through. All it takes is one. All it takes is that breakthrough. And I think Penn State does it on Saturday night. 31-27 I'll go. So Penn State minus 3.5 over 52.5. All right, and then we will finish up in the SEC before going to the lock of the week and dog of the day. Joe, number 17 Alabama at 2-1 at number 5 Georgia 7:30 on ABC. Georgia 2.5-point favorite over under 53.5. And I was saying to McClay earlier as well, it's pretty crazy how Alabama Georgia is not the top game of the week in college football. I don't know if that just goes to show about this season or changing of the guard in college football in general. But with the Big Ten game being Oregon and Penn State, and that's the one everyone's really been talking about all week, and Alabama Georgia taking a bit of a back seat here. Never thought I would see that.
Yeah, it is crazy, Cool. I'm with you that the game everyone's talking about is Penn State Oregon. And that's kind of like what I was saying about the Penn State Oregon game. Penn State, the whiteout is something that is known across the country, even to people who aren't big college football fans or even college football fans in general. They know, oh, Penn State, the whiteout is always a big game. A lot of people are going to tune into it, even if, like I said, you're a casual or you don't really like college football, but you're like, you know what? This is a big game. Saturday night, maybe I'm pre-gaming before going out to the bars. Let me turn it on, have it on the TV. I think both of these games are going to be incredible, but I think that just kind of goes to show you. I think it's more so I don't want to say changing of the guard to the Big Ten just yet. I know people are quick to say, they want to see the SEC now as the number 2 conference behind the Big Ten. I think this just more so has to do with Bama has been down last year, and then opening up, getting splattered by FSU like that doesn't help. So I am going to go with the Georgia Bulldogs, 41-28. But I just think the biggest thing here is that Kirby Smart and Georgia have been rolling for a long time now. I know their defense, Tennessee put up a lot of points. It's not the same as the Georgia defenses of the past, but I still think that they will defend home turf. Night game, you're going to hear the dogs barking. So I'll take Georgia minus 2.5. I'm going to go over 53.5. The one thing that's concerning to me, people were like, oh, Bama looked good over these last couple of weeks. Haven't really played anyone crazy. The Georgia's a completely different animal, especially going on the road. Like Wisconsin, I think Luke Fickle's going to get fired, which is crazy that that hire never worked out. I thought he was going to be great at Wisconsin. He wasn't. I think Georgia is a completely different animal. You also, too, I know, this is the game everyone's talking about, and Bama's not looking ahead. But just being in the SEC and you look at some of these upcoming games, like Saban isn't there anymore, and you could be looking ahead a little bit at some of these games down the road. I know this is the biggest game, but I just think Bama's going to go in there. I think it'll be close at halftime, but I think in the second half, Georgia's going to start to pull away, kind of show the difference now between where Bama is now and where Georgia, who has kind of become the new Alabama, the new top dog in the SEC, the big bully until proven otherwise.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it simple here. Georgia at home. They haven't lost a home game here under Kirby Smart since 2016. 57-4 straight up in home games as well during his time at Georgia. It's just a spot where you got to give him the benefit of the doubt, I think. Alabama had his number year after year, but Nick Saban's no longer on that sideline. And I know Kalen DeBoer beat them last year, but Georgia did pretty much everything that they could to get down and get buried early in that game. They came back, and I think arguably over the course of the game outplayed them. Ryan Williams had that crazy play late to get Alabama back on top. But Georgia, I think in this one, you touched on it, the defense isn't the same as what we've seen. But so when I keep having flashbacks to that week 1 game for Alabama against Florida State, where Florida State's defensive line was wrecking Alabama, was wrecking all their plays, was destroying their offensive line. Ty Simpson was running for his life all day. Georgia's defensive line, I don't think is as good as Florida State, but still, this is a really talented bunch, and I think they're going to be able to disrupt this Alabama offense. You're at home in this one. I think it's one of these scenarios where, until proven otherwise, let's just go with Georgia at home in this spot. I'll take them to cover as well, 33-28. So Georgia minus 2.5, over 53.5. All right, Joe, your time of the week now. Lock of the week, Mr. 5-0. Have not missed a game this week or game this season for your lock of the week. Last week you hit on a pretty wild one with Arkansas, Memphis plus 7.5 against Arkansas. Memphis winds up winning that one outright. Pretty wild game there at the end. What is your lock of the week for this week?
Yeah, I've had a couple of tight ones with my lock of the week. Texas Tech minus 48.5. They won by 49, or maybe it's 47.5. That covered by the hook. Memphis last week coming all the way back. I thought they were dead in the water. That hit. This week I am going to the Big 12. I am going with Jalen Daniels and the Kansas Jayhawks minus 4.5 at home against the Cincinnati Bearcats. I am going with Kansas to cover 4.5. I love Jalen Daniels, that experience he brings. Cincinnati, I think, is a good team. This is just a tough spot on the road. They're coming off a bye. They played Northwestern State the week beforehand, but Cincinnati, they kind of showed it to me against Nebraska. They don't really scare me. I don't really trust this offense. They beat Bowling Green 34-20 at home. I don't care what they did against an FCS school that had one of the longest losing streaks in the country coming into the season. I think Kansas is the better football team. I think they're going to win by at least a touchdown. And I'm going with the Jayhawks to cover minus 4.5 at home against the Cincinnati Bearcats.
All right. My lock of the week last week was in that same game as yours, Joe. That hit as well. Arkansas, Memphis, over 62.5. For my lock of the week this week, I'm going to go to another over. Actually, the same number as I had last week, 62.5. The over in the Tennessee-Mississippi State game shout out to Mississippi State. They've definitely surprised me to start the year, starting out 4-0. Haven't necessarily played a great schedule, but they did take down Arizona State. But that offense, Jeff Levy is a very good offensive play caller. That team's been able to put up points. In Tennessee, they're rolling on offense. Joey Aguilar has been a great fit, a seamless fit, filling in there for Nico at the quarterback spot. That offense has definitely looked better than they did last year. I think if Aguilar was a quarterback at Tennessee last year, they might have had a better chance to win it all. But I do like this over Tennessee, Mississippi State, 62.5. I think this one is probably played in the 70s, and we get a shootout in that matchup. All right, dog of the day. You also hit that last week, Joe, with Maryland plus 10 at Wisconsin, outright winner. I wonder if you did Maryland plus or Maryland money line and Memphis money line last week, what that would have paid out. But your dog of the day this week is who?
Going with the Virginia Cavaliers. I was alluding to it a little bit at the top of the show. At home against Florida State, plus the 7. I think this is a game, Florida State, like I said, this just has look-ahead spot written all over it, and we see it all the time in college football with these, teams that have big games coming up, but in between that, they have to go on the road to Virginia on a Friday night too, going to be a primetime game. The students are going to be going crazy, the fact that they get a game on a Friday night, 7 o'clock. I love Chandler Morris for Virginia. He already has over 1,000 yards passing, 8 TDs, only 1 pick. Virginia off to a 3-1 start. I'm not saying they're going to win the ACC. I'm not saying they're going to win the national championship, but I do think that they are going to stay competitive in this game. I think I'm going to look at the money line tomorrow. I haven't bet it yet. I might sprinkle it. They have a 4-point loss at NC State on their schedule, does Virginia, but have looked good otherwise. And I think this is just a massive, this is your Super Bowl. We kind of have said it in the past. You have a premier program, one of the top teams in the country, one of the class of the ACC coming to your house. There's going to be a massive game. I think Virginia definitely covers the 7 points. Wouldn't be totally shocked if they end up pulling off the upset.
All right, big one there. Like you said, look ahead spot for Florida State to Miami next week. My dog of the day, I'm going to go Arkansas plus 4 at home against Notre Dame. Arkansas, their record doesn't show, but I think that they played pretty well this year so far. And as an underdog under Sam Pittman, Arkansas has been awesome. Their record as an underdog, Sam Pittman's record at Arkansas as an underdog, he's been great. Since 2020, he is 23-13 against the spread. So he's been money there, one of the best coaches in the country as an underdog. And for a coach whose seat has been getting hotter and hotter seemingly every week, you got to think this team shows up for him. At home in this spot against Notre Dame, I won't say it's their Super Bowl because they play in the SEC, but still certainly a big matchup. The offense has been great. Can the defense get some stops, though? The Notre Dame's defense hasn't been that great either, so I think Arkansas is going to be able to put up some points this one. I'm going to go Arkansas plus 4.5. If those players love their coach, which everyone says they do, I think that they show up this week. And I wouldn't be surprised if they pull off the outright upset there either. So big week here in college football, Joe. We got East Carolina beating up on Army tonight. Then we got 2 really good games tomorrow that we touched on, and then a full slate on Saturday. So an exciting slate. As always, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Bet Kansas minus 4.5 for the lock of the week, and we will talk to you on the week. Ooh.
Yes. Still got it. Kansas. Minus the 4.5. Let's go.
Lock of the week?
Oh, yeah.